Well, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. We're now on lesson 7, I believe it is, talking about compassion. A lot of preparations went into the weeks coming up to the different things that God did to position His Son for an effective ministry and beyond that, of course. But the last lesson we had, he was baptized. I'd like to think of that as a commissioning service. God obviously put His stamp of approval on him. The Holy Spirit dropped and then led him through his first message to the hometown, which rejected him, and he went on out from there. And we know in Matthew he had a Sermon on the Mount. This one seems to be on similar topics with similar truth, of course, and is called the Sermon on the Plains, and it's talking about love. Love when it's easy, love when it's not so easy, and I think we could probably use some advice on how to deal with difficult people. I guess you've had some practice. I've had some practice. There's some people practiced on me, and we're going to be talking about that. But he starts out in verse 27, "But I say to you who listen, He says that because already he has spoken in the few verses preceding on people who were not tending to listen. Some were rich. He said, woe to the rich. They've got what they want. They're not feeling any need. Woe to the fool, not feeling the need. Got everything going. They're laughing. Life's good. Woe to the popular, the people with prestige. He was talking to the national pride of the chosen people, the children of Abraham, who thought they were doing Jesus a favor and paying him a compliment when they were talking about his being King of the Jews. They visualized a national kingdom when in reality they were thinking too small. It's a pride thing, not a gratitude thing. And they just were not in a position, those other ones, but he says, I say to you who listen, love your enemies, do what is good. To those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. You like words like that? That sounds a little tough, doesn't it? People who don't particularly like you, maybe dislike you, who treat you unfairly, who may even curse you. What makes some people hard to love? Can we disagree and still love people? I recall speaking on the live stream, I think it was back in June, and I got some comments from some of my relatives across the country, some who see things probably exactly like I do, and some of the things a little different, but they all agreed how wonderful it is that we are so close-knit and we still, in our diversity. In other words, we think a little different. And so I like that, but I'm going to be talking about vengeance, vindication, and victory for a moment here. In Romans chapter 12, verse 19, he says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. He said, you don't have to worry about it. That's my responsibility. I can know whether they're having a bad day, or I can know whether that's just people doing the wrong thing. I can also tailor a chastisement or a corrective thing that might even be educational, help them to think, help them to take inventory. And so he's suggesting that we leave that to him. And when you do that, you heap coals of fire on their head. What's that mean? I guess that's sort of symbolizing grieving or sadness or shame for saying something they shouldn't have or doing something they shouldn't have. And then he goes on to say, we're needing to overcome evil with good. Way back when Kimberly was 5th and 6th grade, a friend of mine named Andy and I coached a girls' softball team. You would have thought it was big time. These 11 and 12-year-olds, we would play a game, then we would go home and get on the phone and analyze it. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? I mean, big time and all that. And we were having a nice season. Things were going pretty well until one of our home games. We went over there like you always do. You do all the dirty work. You line the field. You line up the umpire. Usually a friend who knows a little bit of something about softball. The guy we lined up was a very good softball player, and he knew the game backward and forward. All that said, the other team showed up, and we just couldn't please them. The lines just weren't the way they quite should have been. The umpiring was sort of bad, and he was getting on the umpire and that, and our girls got rattled big time, kicked the ball around more than enough, and we got killed. So, of course, we got on the phone. What are we to do? It's one thing to take a little bit of insult to yourself. Well, one of your friends who's doing you a favor to umpire the game, or these 11 and 12-year-olds who are out there to have fun. Uh, how do you handle a situation like that? Well, I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I came across a psalm that's a perfect psalm for it. I'm just going to use the first 10 verses. There's 40 of them. You can work your way through them when you go home and analyze and understand what it says. It begins with that, fret not because of evildoers, because of somebody's done you wrong for a little bit or for a lot. Don't be envious. Don't try to do the same thing and out evil the evil or anything like that. Verse 3 says, trust and do good. So shall you'll dwell in the land, and verily you shall be fed. In other words, you're going to stick around. You're going to last. It seemed like there's a threat here, but you trust and do right. Just make sure your nose is clean and you're doing the things you ought to. It goes on in a couple of verses later to say, commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And then in another verse it says, in a little while they'll be out of the picture, long forgotten, I guess, by the girls because things finished well. Well, we were playing that same team on their field. I think it was the last game of the season, sort of wrapping things up, and we got out there and we kept our cool, did all the preliminaries with cool heads and cool tongues, and nothing was going there, and then we started the game, and our girls kicked a couple, and we encouraged them. I always felt like you want to teach them the game, but you want to build their confidence, and it seemed like that calmed them down, and they were not doing too bad, and the other team went to the field, and they kicked a few around, and he got on their case. And they kicked a couple more, and he got on their case, and everything blew up, and we won the game and the championship. And of course, the girls made all their noise and happiness and everything, and then they went to the dugout to leave their gloves and that, and go out for the ceremony. And we looked up, and it was like the other team advantage. They just evaporated. They were gone, and we were celebrating. It was just sort of like that psalm describes it. And I was reminded that V stands for vengeance, and that's God's business. And we didn't have to do a thing, lift a finger, or anything like that. V for vindication. Our approach was vindicated. God's word was vindicated. And I think probably they thought that as coaches and leaders, we did all right by them. And that V stood for victory. Happened to be July 4th, and these young gals got their trophy, kept their uniforms on. July 4th is the weekend. The Little Hocking Fire Department has a fundraiser parade and a carnival, and they went down there and showed off their wares and celebrated. It was a big time for them. And then we get the verse 11 says, the meek do indeed inherit the earth, and in addition, they delight themselves in the abundance of peace. So it just happened peacefully in the way that I don't think how you could have designed a better corrective measure than that. I was so happy about that, of course. And when something rubs me the wrong way, I may go there and read through some of it, and there's 40 good verses you can work on and deal with that. Now we come to the next verse or two. It sounds pretty tough. Verse 29 and 30. If anyone hits you on the cheek, offer the other also. If anyone takes away your coat, don't hold back your shirt either. Give to everyone who asks, and from someone who takes your things, don't ask for them back. That's tough to apply. It's tough to apply, but almost seems pretty extreme. I looked at a reference in my Schofield Bible, and it referred to me over 1 Corinthians chapter 6. He says, I find a fault among you because you go to the law against one another. Nothing like two Christians battling in the courts of either the courthouse or public opinion and spreading words that does not bring a whole lot of honor to God or the church or anything else. It can really spoil the reputation of a church and Maybe people think, well, he says, why don't you just absorb the loss? You're going to be against brother and brothers, going against the lawgivers, and we're doing damage. He said, don't escalate things. But then I look at some other verses where sometimes the church as a body needs to put some limitations on things. For example, in 1 Timothy 5, he said, you need to be supporting the widows who are widows indeed. But then he describes some limitations. First of all, if they have a family to support them, let the families, the folks who won't take care of their own are worse than infidels, he said. That's pretty straight talk. He says the women who are younger than 60 may want to get remarried or need to be working. And if they just had everything provided for them, he said things like they may become wanton. He said being idle, they may become busybodies, gossips, that sort of thing. And so above 60 and one who has a good reputation for having prayer, doing good deeds, and helping others during their healthy years, those are the ones you want to take care of. And then over in Thessalonians, that's a real blank. If they don't feel like working, neither should they feel like eating. Something like that. And so you try to structure something that bends over backwards a little, but doesn't invite wrong behavior. I remember one family in our church who were with us for some little time. The father and mother wouldn't do anything. They had a son who was a teenager and a daughter who was a little younger than that, and they were mentioning some need, and I felt like maybe I could give that guy some advice that would help him. I think he was 16 or 17, maybe the age where you can get a job at McDonald's or somewhere like that. And I said, you know, you're pretty healthy. You're in shape, and you can do this for your family, and you'll feel good about it. Next thing I heard, we were hypocrites, and they were going down the road to the next church. And so you run into that sometimes too. But in verse 31 says, just as you want others to do for you, do the same for them. So we rightly apply the word of truth as we take it from the various sources and try to apply it in a generous spirit and help them along the way. Now, we're running into, why are you doing your good deeds? Is it out of a pure heart? Sermon on the Mount says, you know, sometimes we do our good deeds in front of men to be praised by them. Sometimes we try to make our prayers more eloquent and all that, maybe even on a street corner in those days. And he said, you've got your reward. You've already spent it. You got that. And I always feel a little suspicious when I see the sign that takes half the sign to give the credit and then half the other sign to do the good. I just feel like the Bible says, don't even need to let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Just do it out of a pure motive. And I've added one word about 3 times to this. If you just love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you just do what is good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you just lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? So it's sort of like you scratch my back, I'm going to scratch yours. It's sort of a barter system, a business system. If I'm just giving to get, he said, that's not real high on the list. It's sort of like getting the credit. And he said, be generous, help where you can, and go a bit beyond just a barter system. And that's, of course, part of the advantage of image building is getting credit, you know. But he says, sinners lend to sinners to be repaid in full. He said, if you want to bring credit to the Lord, do what is good. and expect nothing in return. Then your reward will be great. You will know the fulfillment. That was one of the F's we were talking about. When we are faithful, we also know fulfillment, the sense of satisfaction of, hey, I'm making a difference. I am really helping some people who could really use some help, or encouraging somebody who's down, or any of the different things that we do. I don't know why it was that the other day was so special, but I had Bill at the mall, and we talked a little while. Then I went to the eye doctor, and I was thinking I might need eye surgery, but no, he says, your retina tear's out on the periphery. You probably won't need that, but go to this doctor and do that. As I went in there, they asked me, who should we contact in an emergency? Should we still contact Diane Masser? I said, well, actually, she died last month. And the lady couldn't be nicer. She promised prayers for me and everything like that. The doctor helped me out. Then I went down to Bob Evans, and I had a meal. And just before I finished up, the waitress came and tore up my bill and said, somebody paid for your meal. It kind of made my day. And I looked around. I didn't see anybody I recognized. I thought I might see one of you there. But anyway, let me know you when I'll let you know when I'll be over there again. Give you the chance of some satisfaction, okay? So fulfillment, that sort of thing. But it talks about a pure heart. How would you define pure? Pure motives, the right thing for the right reason, not for the other reasons we were mentioning. The second benefit is we are representing the Most High God. You will be children of the Most High. And what is He? He's gracious. He makes it rain on the just and the unjust. He's merciful, and we could be merciful and kind. And we'll be getting to this idea of judging, and understand it's probably good to look through the rose-colored glasses while we're analyzing others, something like that. Not being too critical in our judgments, but we represent Him. And if we're merciful, if we're touched, if we're ready to go above and beyond, like He goes above and beyond for us, that's going to reflect on Him. I was watching the 700 Club. Sometimes I find the major news networks are pretty predictable in what they're going to say, and the breaking news they have seemed like I've heard it broken a few times. But anyway, they were talking about representing God, and they said, if you leave a tract, please don't leave a small tip. Be generous. Be known as Christians who are above and beyond, not the ones who are critical or judgmental or something like that. So let me ask you this. Which of Jesus' commands would you find most difficult? Something people did to you? Or something they said to you that almost invites a retaliation? Ask yourself what you could do different. How you could approach it different. A lot of the news, they point out some real problem and somebody says, yeah, but you did that back there. It's sort of like that makes it okay for me to do it, I guess. Or you were unkind, or you attacked somebody or pointed out something. We would just do well to let our vindication come. Chances are when we've done what we could do in something, uh, explaining ourselves does only so much. Just go ahead and do right and let God do the vindicating. Let God do the corrective things. And if that person from the blue state did something to that red state, or that red state did something to that blue citizen, we could just leave that rest and maybe live a lot more peaceful life. In fact, the prayer for our nation in the paper says, or in the Word says, pray for the authorities that you might live a quiet and peaceful life in godliness and honesty. And I'll have to be honest with you, sometimes the best place for me is up in my field, sort of a sanctuary, a sort of a space. I'm not judging anybody, nobody's judging me. But then when we get out in that, we'll be sort of prepared in spirit. And even as we think about the months ahead for our country, let's do that. One of the areas we have big disagreements is sanctity of life. As we close tonight, I'm going to ask Jay to pray for our nation and our Christian posture in this, that we be as effective as possible in our current culture and represent God as clearly but also kindly. I think we were talking, marrying the two words mercy and truth, and how do we deliver a true message in a merciful way. So we even have in our communications, in our national policies or postures, things that could be inflammatory. Probably some of the diversity I was hearing about that June sermon might have been on something I said there, for all I know. But then we come to the third point where it says with mercy. To what extent do we treat others as they treat us? And to what extent do we view others as they view us? Do we view them as an adversary? Can we set a tone that we can disagree and still get along, still be tight, still be close? Can we set a tone? Verse 37, do not judge, and you will not be judged. So their tendency will be going easy on you when you go easy on them, and not being nitpicky or anything like that. Forgive, and you will forgive. Let me ask you one question. We pray, forgive us our debts as. Forgive us our debts in the same way we forgive our debtors. Can we afford to ask God that? God, just be as kind to me as I am to him. Just be as forgiving to me as I am to her. That's a high bar to clear. That's a high bar to clear. And so, just as we don't need to be doing the vengeance, we probably don't need to be going beyond having our own opinions on things, which we need as we inspect fruit and see if this is someone we run with or we stay some distance apart from for our own spiritual safety. There's a lot said in Proverbs about the kind of friends we choose and the kind of activities we participate in. And so we have to use discernment and pray for discernment. And in all of these things, we just might need to lean on the Holy Spirit to show us these shades of difference. What's possible? Do we see them hopeless, or do we see potential? Jesus came across some people who they looked hopeless, but they weren't. And we come across people too who can surprise us with responses. When I was pastoring, I remember a few people who were tagged, oh, you're not going to get anywhere with them. We got a long way with them. They were part of us after that. But, you know, their first impression was, and so we, we need to be careful about that. Can we grow in generosity? What's a good way to grow in generosity? Yeah, try it. Try it, huh? That's not a bad way. And you can do a little more, a lot. Okay, there's a slogan out there these days. Let's pay it forward. Is that a good slogan? Pay almost sounds materialistic. I guess invest would be better. I make an investment in somebody to help them along so they can make an investment in someone else, and they help them along and bring them back from a problem, something of that sort. Uh, do we focus on how we can benefit others? I think maybe a good practice, talking about a little bit or a little bit more. What person can I call this week that might mean something to them? Then next week, we can look around, go up and down the church row or something. Different things will occur to you at different times. Now that I'm a widower, I saw the words about widows and being caring for them in a little different vein. And I try to send a Christmas card to every widow that I can identify in our church, and I think most of the widowers too. As the Lord speaks to you and gives you an idea, see there, I let my left hand know what the right hand's doing. What was I thinking? But anyway, I was illustrating. But we see people who are, and I've been so blessed and impressed and helped by the flood of sympathy cards that came our way over the last 5 or 6 months. They do mean a lot, and especially when an extra personal note's added to the printed script, something you noticed in Mary or something you liked in Diane or some experience you had together. It meant a lot, those things. I got a stack of them. I'm going to hang on to them and read through them a few times. But we can do those type of things that are an investment in some. Next week it'll be another. Next week it'll be another. And some day my kids will be benefiting from cards sympathizing on my situation. So he says, give. Yeah. Yeah. If we get a little nudge, why not act on it? And we may not be the biggest prayer warrior in the world, but Proverbs says, commit your way to the Lord and your thoughts will be established. And your thought will go to that. And as you do the gesture, you will also probably enrich and know some of the more things to be praying for in that person's experience and in their walk. And so the things go together. It's not always I get the total revelation and I do it. Many times I go on the nudge and then things unfold. Yeah, that happened in about the right time in the right way. And it's just wonderful to see how those things work. Uh, Give, it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. I like the King James Version better where it says, shall men give into you, into your bosom. It's more personal than shall be poured into your lap. With the measure you use, it will be measured back to you again. And I just mentioned the way things went the other day for me. It was just the Lord dropping some of those things on me. And as far as peace loving, if possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men. So, can we set the tone on all? No, there'll be a small percentage that'll grump back whether you smile or frown. But there's a big percentage of people, and that's the one thing I do really dislike about these masks. I can't tell whether you're smiling or frowning. I'm assuming you're smiling, but I would like to see the corners turned up, and I can't do that. But anyway, we can't send our signals quite as well as we used to. But God's not miserly with His gifts. The image of a basket of grain pressed down, shaken together, and running over just shows the abundance of God's liberality. And we can sense that and see things that way. I think it goes a long way toward our outlook on life, doesn't it? Why be pessimistic? Why be critical when you can be optimistic and positive about things? We have this question: in what practical ways can we express love as we strive to protect the sanctity of human life? Well, I think we could probably support the work of the Women's Care Center, pray for the work of the Women's Care Center, and be caring and loving and understanding for those who have made that mistake in the past and not consider that any different than some of the things we've done or thought of doing. The anger that's welled up within us at some point in time that would, Jesus said, maybe almost be an indicator of murder. We can understand a bit and help a bit on those who find their situation very threatening, find the disapproval or the facts of life too hard to handle. Hey, we've all stubbed our toe along the way. And we just be understanding and caring for that situation like we do for others, acknowledging that we're one beggar, letting another beggar know where to find bread at the foot of the cross. And don't judge. Don't condemn. So we'll be moving along to other things next week. These people were reminded to listen. Next week we'll be talking about Jesus and His offers being rejected. But this week, this Friday, is Sanctity of Life Sunday. And so for the cause and our desire to have no attrition in our nation's stand and our desire to have places like the Women's Care Center and others communicate clearly, and the technical tools we have to identify life at its first onset in the tummy, tools we never had before, and using these things effectively to um, advance the cause and the reality that these little lives matter, and it's hard to say what we're removing from the possibilities of this world by doing that. And so I've asked Jay to close us in prayer. Friday's that day. We could probably all do well to pray along the lines that Jay's going to pray now. When you will do that, Jay.